Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of these Saturday Lives. I know. Everyone's gonna be saying like, Dan, you haven't had one for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, because that's how we do it. But anyone listening on the podcast, this is another Saturday Live, but you are probably hearing this on a random weekday. But anyway, guys, today I am talking to a gentleman called Ron Sanderson, who I spoke to. I recognize this guy from like TV or something. I don't know how I recognize this person, but he's been on a bunch of stuff. He's got some really cool stuff. He's an autistic advocate. He's an author. We're gonna get into all of that. Right now, Ron, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi there. Thanks for having me on your show. Right now, I'm on the front line of fighting COVID in the mental health field. I work in the mental health field, working front line as a tech, working with mental health patients. I also have 3 nationally published books: A Parent's Guide to Autism, Practical Advice, Biblical Wisdom, which became one of the top 5 best-selling Christian books on autism all the time. I wrote a book on theology, thought, choice, action on St. Augustine. And my 3rd book, Views from the Spectrum, comes out May 25th. And I interviewed Armani Williams, a NASCAR driver, Rachel Barcelona, Miss Tampa, and many other famous people while writing my book. And I speak at 70 events a year on autism. I also have a very unique gift. I have over 15,000 Bible verses memorized word perfect. And I founded Spectrum Inclusion that helps people who are on the autism spectrum get employed through mentoring and resources. Currently in the United States, less than 5% of people with autism are gainfully employed as I am. And my goal in life is to be the first autistic congressman and change the status on employment and change neurodiversity so people who are neurodivergent are getting hired. And I got my mascot, it's a honey badger. And I got my other mascot, a prairie dog. The prairie dog is how I learned how to read and write as a young child, and he's now over 40 years old.
Whoa, geez. So how old are you then, Ron, if you don't mind me asking?
I'll be 46 May 10th, so I'm almost 46.
Holy smokes. Dude, you look like, I would say you're about 30, easy. 29, 30 years old, I'd say you look.
Yeah, I keep in good shape. Up to about 5 years ago, I could still run a mile in about 4:30.
Dude, that's impressive. I do the same. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything like that. You know, I'm a vegan. I work out 3 times a week because any more than that, and I start breaking down. And it's good to keep yourself in focus, you know. And I think one of the interesting things about keeping yourself in shape, I do this thing called the Miracle Morning. I don't know if you've heard of this. It was a procedure put forward by a guy called Hal Elrod, where you do like some like affirmation stuff in the morning and a prayer in some respect, and then you do kind of like some study, like it could be Bible study for yourself or reading a book. Right now I'm reading a semi-religious book called you might have heard of this one actually. It's the guy's, I can't remember the author's called, The Power of Positive Thinking. Have you heard of this book?
Yeah, I've heard that. I've actually read that, and it's a very good book.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing I do to keep myself, because I think you got to be mentally in shape, you got to keep your spirit in shape, you know, and you got to keep your body in shape as well. And I think that's really important. So, excellent stuff. You like, it's not often I come across people who kind of like trump me and match me at the amount of crazy stuff that they do. And so I take my hat off to you. You know, you do that. You you definitely do that. Yeah, I want to talk about the book. So you just had a new book out, right? This is the latest one, or it's coming out, right?
Yep.
So do you want to talk a little bit about this specific book?
Yeah, so Views from the Spectrum is a book that's for families who have children on the autism spectrum and also young adults. And it's 20 inspiring stories of amazing people like Tarko, a pro baseball player for the Kansas City Royals, and Armani Williams, a NASCAR driver. Actually, this Sunday, I'm going to be meeting Armani Williams at his home and meeting his family and being able to talk to him and share even more after I interviewed him and share his story in the book. People like Rachel Barcelona, Miss Tampa. And I share how their families were able to use those unique gifts, those unique talents, and refine them into beautiful gifts. My mom worked with me. I was severely autistic. My speech development was so delayed that when I was 7 years old, my brother Chuck would introduce me to people saying, "You got to meet my brother Ron. I think he's from Norway." He'd have me talk, knew what I was saying except my immediate family. They could interpret Ron language, but no one else could. And he became an expert on Norwegian languages. And my mom always said that autism isn't something you cure, it's something you refine. And
Hmm.
what she meant by that is I can't cough on you and you get the autism flu. I could cough on you if I had COVID and you could get COVID, but you wouldn't get the autism flu.
Right.
And autism unrefined for me looked like this. You're walking on the beach or on the sidewalk, the back black pavement to go to the beach on the hot black pavement and bare feet, and all of a sudden something feels jagged and sharp. You go down, you pick it up. It's a piece of glass. All of a sudden now your foot is cut. You take that grass and you throw it away because it's unrefined glass. And for me, autism was jagged. I couldn't help saying certain things that popped in my mind. If a thought came in, I'd say it unfiltered. Autism unrefined for me was not being able to control my emotions. When I got hyper, I just go off and melt down. But autism refined now looks like this. You're off that hot black pavement, you're walking along the ocean, and all of a sudden your foot feels something good. You go down, you pick it up, it's a piece of glass. It's been refined by something greater than itself, the ocean. For me, autism refined was learning social skills, interacting with other children, taking speech therapy all the way from age 2 to 16, learning how to read using art and visual in ways I was able to learn. And it was a prairie dog named Prairie Pup who my mom bought me when I was age 7 and used him as my special interest to teach me. And it's also the honey badger that I have that's a fierce advocate. I got my first honey badger on my honeymoon, and that one I don't take when I speak places, because when you press its paw, every F-bomb in the book comes flying out its mouth in a lisp voice. So I don't take them. I don't want people to think I'm having a live meltdown. And that's what these parents did with their children, is they didn't cure autism, they refined it. So Armani Williams is now driving NASCAR,
Yeah, I
and
spoke. Yeah,
Tarko's throwing balls in the major leagues.
yeah,
But the parents found that talent, they refined that talent, and they use that talent for something great. Even a video game designer, their son, Peter Lentz, loved video games, and parents figured out how they were able to market that and help them design video games professionally. And parents need to find the gift, find the talent, and refine that gift and talent, as my parents did and so many others. And my book encourages that. It also has a spiritual component where each chapter has verses from the Bible to meditate on and positively be able to focus. And it has a prayer where they're able to center on the divine and have hope for the future. A lot of families, when they get the autism diagnosis, they feel hopeless. They feel like, where can I go? And my books provide that information, that advice, and shows them how they can connect not only with therapy, but also with a higher power and with abilities and people who have already been on the journey farther than they have, and who can encourage them on their journey and teach them how they were able to help their child reach their full potential. And I always say full potential is different for each child. For one child, maybe not biting, and may be able to communicate a few words for their needs. For other children on the autism spectrum, it may be getting their PhD. It may have a career where they're able to help advance technology and help advance our civilization.
absolutely, dude. I think your book sounds absolutely incredible. I gotta get me a copy of it like ASAP. I think it sounds amazing, and I can totally relate to teaching yourself, or learning more skills like social skills. Because I went to a mainstream high school and a mainstream primary school, which is a preschool in America. And I do believe that if I hadn't been in those situations, I've been blessed with people like friends who would teach me social things, and I'm still learning every day. But if I hadn't have had those experiences and I went to like a special school, I don't think I would have developed as much, because I would have been, kept back from maybe experiencing certain social situations. And I did a video all about like autism and schooling, because I feel like this phenomenon is quite apparent, where when you have a special need or an additional need, and then you're put into an additional needs education system, they it's kind of like it makes almost sometimes it incubates the issues sometimes because you're surrounded by that issue. But when I was, you know, okay, a bit more like scarred by being in mainstream school because I was like kind of like in too deep, I was in deep water and I didn't know what I was doing. But I do feel like I've learned so much more social skills from those situations, and because of those situations, I'm forever grateful because I feel like I was able to, you know, my speech and my ability to understand what other people are trying to say to me is kind of really increased. And it's interesting, what you're saying about, it's not curing autism because obviously there is no cure. It's not something you can cure. It's not a disease, right? It's a neurological condition that is a lifelong developmental neurological condition, and a lot of people forget that. The parents get like the bum ride because they kind of like they have the shock kind of, I need to help my kid, and then like, where do I go? And I think things that you're doing, with the book, and you say, you did like 70 speeches a year or something like that. It's like ridiculously good, and it's things like that which has the power to change the world. So I'm honored really to have you on this podcast. And you said something, that your book was doing, which I really reflected in my talk. So in the last speaking tour I did before COVID hit, I was talking about how, like, the main premise of the whole show is about how when parents, they kind of they have a kid on the spectrum, and then they go, oh, my kid can't read very well, they can't write very well, and they're selective mute, or they got delayed speech, and then they focus on those things like, oh goodness, what they can't do, but then they never say, hey, my kid is like kick butt at Legos, or he's like the best computer program I've ever seen, or like you can memorize Bible verses in the thousands. Like it's really interesting that the parents always kind of like fill their kind of focus with the things negatively with the things that the kid can't do rather than the things that the kid can do. And it's that encouragement, like you said, it's that kind of refining the things that they're really good at to really propel them forward. And I always say to parents, because I'm a YouTuber and I know other YouTubers, and there's a guy called Sean that I know. He's an Irish YouTuber, but he lives in the UK, and he's like a multimillionaire from just playing video games and reviewing video games on his channel, Jacksepticeye. And it's things like that when you say to a parent, look, if your kid is good at something, then really focus in on that thing that they're good at. So I want to thank you for kind of highlighting that, and also putting it into a book where parents can really digest it, And so tell me, what are your diagnosis yourself? Like what is your current kind of diagnosis?
All right, so in 1982, I was diagnosed with autism at age 7. When I was diagnosed, only 1 in 10,000 children were diagnosed with autism, and now it's 1 in every 59 children, 3 out of every 4 children with autism will be male, and 1 in 37 males will have autism. And then later on in life, I was diagnosed as an autistic prodigy because of my art ability and my ability to memorize vast amounts of information. During my lifetime, I've only met one other person who had as many verses of the Bible memorized as I did. And I got to intern and mentor under Dr. Jack Van Impe. And he died he died 2020 on January 18th. And when he died, the New York Times did a 2-page article on his ministry because he was so well known. Wow. And when I worked for him, he said I was the only person he ever met in his lifetime who was able to do what he was able to do. And also, I had the first major Americans with Disabilities case in the state of Michigan. My senior year of high school, I was the second fastest 3,200 relay team for the state of Michigan. And I was past the age limit to compete due to autism holding me back in kindergarten. And I had to go to the federal courts, and I won, and I got to compete my senior year. And CNN carried my story in all the news stations. And my relay team ran the second fastest time in the state of Michigan. And I got full ride for track and cross country. But again, it took parents who were advocates and saw that gift was there for track and cross country. And what I say too is with autism, gifts morphs. They change and transform into other gifts. And if you can take that gift, well, it's a passion, well, it's a special interest, and help them learn by it, when the next gift comes, it's going to morph into new abilities, new talents. And that's what my parents did with track and cross country. Once that morphed into an interest in theology, it spilled out into academics. And then from there, went into a career and being able to work full time and be gainfully employed going on now over 13 years in the mental health field, and as a professor for 17 years of theology.
Wow. And so, do you have a PhD in theology?
Now I have a Master of Divinity from Oral Roberts University.
Oh, but you
So it's
teach.
one step below a PhD.
Yeah. Yeah, that's dude. I mean, wow, you just blew me away. Like it's incredible. I love it, and it's funny. The whole thing about memorizing stuff. And I love that you said about the whole morphing of different ideas because, I love all kinds of things. I don't know how much you know about me, but like I have a degree in chemistry, and I found that just fascinating. I loved it, and I never found myself as an academic, or I didn't even like mathematics until I did it, and then I applied it, and I was like, wow, I really love maths now. I love science and academia, and then like writing a book was super interesting. An interesting experience. But then like also I'm a multi-musician. I taught myself to play different types of instruments, and I've got like a CD out in Japan and I'm signed to an American record label as well. And I'm just, as you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, because like I just morph like the things that I'm really into, I became a marketing expert and a Facebook marketing analyst expert because I was just fascinated by how I just absorbed all this information and then I could retain that information. And one of my friends is always really well, actually, a lot of people, but when they get to really know me, but they're always really shocked the amount of information I know on a subject, right? And that the amount of information I can regurgitate on a subject. And I always find it like I feel personally like I don't know that much. I would feel like, if you were to visualize it, I would say there's like a box like this, and I know like this much, and there's so much more space that I feel like I've not filled up with information or data. But they're just like blown away with the amount of stuff that I know. I'm thinking, goodness me. And I've never met anybody else other than you right now, actually, that could detest the fact that they had like, oh yeah, I can, memorize X amount, X amount, X amount. I love that. And it makes me feel a bit more kind of, I don't know, bit more in the know with people. I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah, Dr. Tony Atwood, I was going to say, says that a person with autism or Asperger's in a very short time can become one of the top experts in the world on a topic that they're interested in. And that's how it's been for both me and you.
Yeah, dude, it's funny you should say that because I wanted to I've made an online course teaching people how to like for parents and caregivers and stuff like that, how to be with their children who are on the spectrum and stuff. I wanted to give my perspective, similar to what you've done on your book and stuff, but I wanted to give more of like I don't know, like a video education thing, because obviously video is my thing. And so I did this course with this company, and they were talking about how marketing and all this stuff works. And I was like, didn't really care about it. And then I parted ways with that company, and I still had all this data. And I was like, I want to market it. So I spent literally 2 weeks digesting every single book I could find, every single podcast, every single blog, every single piece of information I could find on digital media, social media marketing, funnels, everything like that. And I went from literally knowing nothing about it to being paid an excessive amount of money as a consultant for large companies in America, which I'm not legally obliged to talk about, but as a consultant, I still do that right now. I consult with large companies on business marketing and social media marketing, and it's crazy. And it's funny because that's what you said, like in a short space of time, I was able to just focus all my energy on that, just like that. And I love doing that. I don't know, you almost become a micro expert or a master in those things, right? And then I always feel like I've mastered that thing and then I'm going to move on to the next one. But those things are always going. So I'm always learning new things from that thing. So it's kind of like spinning plates. You master how to spin this plate and it keeps spinning. And you do another one, it keeps spinning. And you've got all of these plates of interest that keep going. And yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. So where are you located then? Where are you? What part of the world?
I live in the United States. I live in Rochester Hills, Michigan. And when the pandemic began, Michigan with Detroit was the third hardest hit city in the United States when it first began. Yeah, New York was hit hard, California, and Michigan. Now it's pretty well leveled out. Things are getting somewhat back to normal. Hopefully they'll be able to speak again, live again. It's still things are closed as I speak right now. And I grew up in Michigan. I went to college way out in Oklahoma, Tulsa, which is a 16-hour drive from Michigan, or 930 miles away. And I currently work, as I mentioned earlier, in the mental health field. and as a professor at Destiny School of Ministry. And then I was speaking at 70 events a year. I do about now 30 to 40 conferences, where before I was doing a lot more. But as soon as things open up, I'll be doing that again. And I'm working on my 4th book right now, Autism, Growth, and Transitioning Adulthood. It's a book on young adults with autism and how they can transition into adulthood. And like you, when I wrote my first book, I only knew a little bit about autism, my own experiences, but I interviewed 50 of top experts in the world who work in the autism field, people like Dr. Lynn Coiney from the UCLA Autism Center, even famous television evangelists who had kids on the autism spectrum. And I interviewed 50 of the best known people on the autism spectrum. And in a 9-month period of time, I became one of the top experts in Michigan on mental health and on autism. And now when they newscasts are doing things on mental health or autism, I'm one of the first people they call.
I love it, dude. That's awesome. Like you're blowing my mind. I love this. And so I want to, in terms of like online, I mean, you have such a lot of resources to give. How can people find you? Where's the best place? Like plug your socials, plug your website. Where can people listen right now? Where can they go?
The best place is spectruminclusion.com. That's my website. It gets about 10,000 views a month. And then if they want to reach me, the best way is Sandison, Sandison 456 at hotmail.com. All my books are found on Amazon. If you Google Ron Sandison, I get first on Google. I like to joke is that the reason I go by Ron Sandison and not Ronald Sandison, the most famous person named Ronald Sandison in the 1940s and 1950s, he tested LSD on children. And the guy lived to about 95. And the funny irony is that his final book was published by Jessica Kingley Publishing out of the UK. And it's the #1 publisher for autism. So I don't want them thinking I'm getting autistic kids on LSD like the other Ronald Sandison, who's now passed away. So I go by Ron, so I get first on Google. But if you do Ronald, you're going to get this guy who his research is still world renowned because no one can repeat it. Yeah. No one can do the things he did that you could in the 1940s and 1950s.
Sheesh. Who was giving kids LSD? I mean, it was a crazy time, wasn't it? I mean, back in the day, goodness.
Yeah, 1940s and 50s.
Wow. I mean, yeah, post World War II and all that. It was a very interesting time. But needless to say, that is great. I think that there's so much wealth that you have to offer in terms of value for people. I think that everybody definitely needs to go to your site. I will link everything in the description and the show notes of this video and podcast so everyone can find you. Now, Ron, is there anything you want to kind of like say or kind of talk about before we kind of wrap this interview up? Because I think people are just raring to go and search you up on the internet right about now.
Okay, thanks. There's one quote I love. I have over 5,000 quotes memorized word perfect, and it's this. It's Pastor Charles Spurgeon, by perseverance, the snail made on the ark. And I like to say, no matter how slow your child is or how slow you are cognitively, if you're heading in the right direction like that snail, you're going to reach your goal or the arc that's set up for you. And I encourage people that my development began very slow. I was 20 years old when I graduated from high school. People wanted me to wait one more year so I could be the designated buyer. I was 35 years old before I moved out of my parents' house. I was 40 years old when I became a dad, 40 years old when my first book came out, A Parent's Guide to Autism, Practical Advice, Biblical Wisdom, 42 when my second book come out, and I'll be 46 when my third book comes out. But it's not the rate that you move it, it's the success that you achieve. And a lot of times on the spectrum, most of our success is later in life. We're late bloomers, and then not to think just because a development is delayed doesn't mean it's denied.
Ooh, nice. Thank you so much, Ron. That's incredible. And you're such an inspirational guy. We're definitely going to keep in contact forever now. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and just wow. I mean, I'm just blown away. So I will encourage everybody I know to go and check you out because You've just blown my mind. So guys, check out Ron's website. Again, I'll leave a link for this in the description and the show notes. You'll definitely check it out. And this will be in a blog format on my website as well, theaspieworld.com, where you'll find all the links to Ron's stuff. Awesome.